You know how I translate that? I translate not they will integrate, translate that they'll all become democratic voters. So I don't care about the goat carcasses, and I don't care about the negative impact it has on women and the working classes and gay people and Americans in general. I don't care about that as long as they vote for me and for my party. That's how I translate it.
So obviously you're from Somalia, so I wanted to get your take on the latest scandal around Somalians in Minnesota. This is an accusation that there's been lots of fraud against American taxpayers. Were you surprised when you found out that these accusations existed?
No, I wasn't surprised, because I think I first heard of this fraud in Minnesota perpetrated by some Somalis, I think as far back as 2013 or 2014. There were suitcases full of money that were being, and I think maybe that's how it was discovered. They were trying to fly out with the money, and someone had discovered it, and it had to do with daycare centers. So I vaguely remember that, reading about it, and then in the other time thinking, A, the money might be going to Al-Shabaab, and B, it's in the news, and so the relevant authorities will handle it.
Is there something in the kind of Somali culture that might lend towards what they've done or what they've been accused of doing, this mass fraud? Why do you think it's the Somali community in particular that has seemingly been committing these crimes?
So I think the question that you pose on culture is really the most important question. This is not to say that other ethnic groups do not commit fraud and any of that. It's also not to say that all Somalis commit fraud, but it's to say that the Somali culture, going, I don't know, as far back as hundreds of years, is radically different from the modern Western nation-state culture of citizenship and individual responsibility. The Somali culture is divided into clans, and it's operated by the clan code and the clan culture, and that is collective and collectivist. There's no property rights the way we interpret property rights in the West. There's also what's inside the clan and how the moral system that operates within the clan and governs, let's call it the insiders, the in-group. And then there's the code of how you are to interact with out-group people. So if I try and use this analysis to understand what's going on in Minnesota, if there are conversations about applying for benefits, taking those benefits for things that they're not supposed, saying that you're starting a daycare, there's no daycare, but you take the money. In a clan moral discussion, it would be, what are you going to spend the money on? Do you think we can be caught or not caught? It doesn't go straight away to, this is immoral and wrong. There'll be some individuals probably who have been long enough in America to understand, hey, that's a crime and it's a bad thing to do here. But those individuals will be quickly silenced and quickly sidelined. But broadly speaking, the clan will be, will say, hey, this is providential, this is, it's rizq, it's sustenance from God. And then take that money. And so I think this is also part of where this clan loyalty, I think there was, I wrote a piece about it where I had cited Edward Banfield, who had studied a Sicilian tribe, in the 1950s or 1960s, and it's what they call amoral familism, is what Edward Banfield called it. And it's something along those lines. It is blind loyalty to the group, and it's the expectation that everyone else is doing it, and if you don't do it, you're a sucker. So that clan mentality meets with this crazy business model of the Democratic Party today, where they think, the Democratic Party leadership think that they can control the ethnic vote. And so then you get this symbiotic relationship between the Somalis who think, wow, this flow of money, that's great. and have no moral qualms about taking that money and abusing the system. And a system that readily provides that money, because you can circulate, you can bring some of the money back and donate it to these politicians. And even if you don't donate the money to them, you assure them of a voting bloc that keeps them in office. So that aspect of the fraud is something that I think you can't accuse the Somalis of doing, but it is an opportunity that Somalis recognize and take advantage of.
Now, obviously, you are Somalian and you moved to the West and you experienced or you viewed how other Somalis viewed the West in the Netherlands and in other countries. How do a lot of Somalis, in your experience, view their host nations when they move to the West? How do they view America? Do they view America with respect? And I suppose what you're saying about the clan system, are they then putting their clan above their host nations, their sort of loyalty to the host nation?
Yes. The answer is an unequivocal yes. Now, there are individuals, as I said, who know, because they've lived in the West long enough, that doing that is wrong, that it's immoral, and that it could get them into legal trouble. Now, those individuals then have a binary choice. That is to stay within the clan or to step out altogether. You turn your back on clan culture and you say, I don't want to have anything to do with it. That's what I did in 1993 in the Netherlands. I couldn't live the way I was expected to live, have one leg in this clan code, and then try and make a living and move along, move ahead in this incredibly modern, Western, advanced culture. So that's the binary choice that most of these people have. But the clan code is very clear. That's where your loyalty lies. And in your loyalty, and sometimes when you listen to these justifications, the moral justifications for when you're doing something that is illegal in a country, then at the time I would hear it very plainly, but they are infidel. They are outsiders. They are our enemy. People would just have a stream of justifications for why you would take what is not yours and give it to members of the clan. Another thing I notice about the discussions in the Minnesota, but also Ohio and even Sweden, other places, is that when we talk about benefits, we constantly talk about the collective. So we see that it is, people from Somalia who are applying for these benefits as a collective. These are so-called Somali daycare centers or Somali health care centers and so on. And that's then, it's described in positive language, or they're entrepreneurs. It's seen as a form of adaptation. And these white politicians, they come out and they start to defend the desire for Somalis to hold on to their culture and hold on to their clan code as something negative, something positive and enriching. But then when they defraud the system, suddenly then Mayor Jacob Fry and Tim Walz, the governor, they come out and say, oh, it's individuals who commit the crime. So crime is individual, but the collective benefits, that's collective. You use the collective argument when it suits you, and you use the individual argument when it suits you, which again, this undermines the system. And I think the benefit system in America was to begin with fragile. And it has to be for all ethnic groups and for all individuals. I think the system has to be dodged. It has to be made fraud-proof and abuse-proof. And that's just a general observation. It's an underestimating of the Somali capacity, the Somali clan capacity to extract not millions, but billions and billions of dollars. And so now here you have fed the beast. And how are you going to square this up? And that's the question for the politicians who thought that they could easily benefit from this.
There was a mayoral election in Minneapolis, which is where tens of thousands of Somalis live in the United States, last year. and the election was between Democrats. There's no way that Republicans can win in that city. The mayor, you mentioned Jacob Frey, he is obviously a white Democrat, but he's been spending a lot of time trying to court the Somali community, speaking their language, going to community events, speaking with community elders and so on. And there was also actually a Somali candidate who lost that race. And there have been reports that both candidates were trying to appeal to different clans, because there's not just one Somali clan, there are different clan groups. Do you suspect that clan politics came into that electoral race? Do you think these reports could be accurate?
Absolutely. If you look at the clans, I mean, to an American viewer, this sounds like gobbledygook. But the Darod clan is represented, and then within the Darod clan are some sub-clans. So there are Ogaden and in Minnesota, and the Harti. Harti are made up of Macherten and Worsingeli and others, but there is a huge representation of Macherten. Ilhan Omar is Macherten. The other guy who, Omar Fateh, I don't know what clan he is. I've only just found out about him when he was running for that election, so I haven't quite figured out what clan he belongs to. But yes, that is the clan politics in Somalia. Among Somalis, they're probably not very happy with the way the money was divvied up, or maybe the scandal itself. And there are also some Somalilanders that are represented in Minnesota, and they may be among the whistleblowers. But yeah, the clan aspect features in there, and Jacob Frey thinks that he is sophisticated enough in these clan rules to take part in it. He was voted into office, so who knows? Maybe he has figured out how these things work. But again, I think of it as very destructive politics to pander to that. Because what you want is for the Somalis to assimilate into American culture, not for American culture to assimilate into Somali clan culture. And the Somali clan culture is destructive.
President Trump and some Republicans have been talking about deporting the Somalis who have been accused of fraud or convicted of fraud. And then there are others who say, well, why don't we just deport all the Somalis from America on the right of the Republican Party? Do you think that's a fair solution? Do you think that goes too far? What's your view on the deportations?
I think it's a very healthy conversation to have. Why is it healthy? Because I think it confronts Somalis with that binary choice I alluded to earlier, which is being an American doesn't mean that you just hold a piece of paper that gives you citizenship. It's much more than that. And so as a Somali, you'll have to be forced to shift your loyalties consciously from the clan code to the American Constitution. And that's why I think that conversation is very healthy. And it's not going to apply only to Somalis, it's going to apply to all immigrants. Do you want to become an American? And do you want to be loyal to the American Constitution, American laws, American norms, and contribute to American society? Or do you want to have one leg in the culture and clan and country that you came from? And in that case, we don't want you here. I think it's not just fair. I think it's also self-preservation.
Democrat politicians would argue that Somalis enrich American culture through their food, through their customs, and they make America a more interesting, multicultural, vibrant place. How do you respond to that argument?
Well, the numbers are there for all to see. In the Minnesota case, I think there's been a lot of number crunching that's going on, and we come to numbers such as 80%, 89, nearly 90% of Somalis who live in Minnesota are on some form of benefit or another. And then look at the scale of the fraud. Look at the timeline. This fraud thing has been going on for many, many years. And look at just how strong that clan code is, in the sense that we're talking about billions of dollars. Some people have said the amount of money that's missing is bigger than the GDP of Somalia itself. So that is an amount of money that Somalis in Minnesota and elsewhere, they just can't pretend that they didn't know. I think everybody knew. And so what is the enrichment? Is it the stealing? Is it the dependency on welfare? How do you define benefit? And so how do you define, that Somalis are enriching? What exactly are they enriching? Someone said, I think it was Rowan Atkinson, he said, now we have the recipes, kick them out or something like that. So if you think Somali food is indispensable, I can give you the recipes.
He said that as a joke. We just have to emphasize that. Back in, I think, the 80s or something. Why did so many Somalians move to America and to the West? Was it the Civil War in the 90s? Why are there Somalians still in America? Can you just explain the background to that?
In my view, it's because the clan code and clan culture doesn't work to build a nation. So it's impossible to build Somalia as a nation state so that Somalis can live and thrive and flourish in Somalia, in their own homeland. And so the reason why they leave is because Somalia is broken, and they go to different countries and explore what is it that I can, how can I build a life, not just for myself, but for my family, my relatives, my clan members. And America has done a number of things. America resettled refugees right after the 1991 Civil War broke out. But even before that, America and Canada, North America was taking Somalis in and then providing them with these benefits. I think it's unfortunate for the Somalis that they started to come to America at a time when America was no longer being selective and wasn't making the demands that, in order to bring a relative, you had to support that relative, and you should never be able to depend on the system. So it's been unfortunate for Somalis that way, and so they came to this easy money. But they come today also because it is not under the Trump administration, but before the Trump administration. There was the buzz, hey, if you come here, it's not just coming to America, but if you come to Minnesota, there's just this easy money to be had, and you can become a part of it. Yeah, and even if there's no open invitation, come for this easy money. Most people just see it's just a huge amount of money, and for poor people in a poor country, that's overwhelming. People just get attracted. It's like the gold rush. And Minnesota represented that. And then there's this buzz about Minnesota nice, which nice, I think, just is a euphemism for naive.
So you mentioned about why they come to Minnesota in particular. Now, this is an interesting question. So I was not in Haiti, I was in Springfield, Ohio last year, where I was making a documentary about the Haitians who live there. And I was asking, why were so many Haitians going to this particular random place in Ohio? And the reason was that they had a kind of small Haitian community there who then told other Haitians in America and in Haiti and around the world, come to this place and we can help you as a kind of community. Now, I live in Washington, D.C. I moved from Britain. I didn't think, where are all the Brits in America? I need to come and have my community and live with them in one particular place, obviously. So is that the same thing going on here in Minnesota? Is that the same thing that happens with Somalians, where they're not choosing, oh, well, I'm going to go and live in Florida because it's lovely there, or I've got a job prospect in California, or, I really want to live in Maine. No, it's like, it's my community are there, so I have to move to where my community is.
Yes, Somalis cluster. Again, that is also part of the clan code, is you want to live as close as possible to your bloodline. And remember, there is what we call welfare in the West. That is, the clan provides the welfare for the Somalis. So when you come as a Somali, let's say you're rejected or you use up your money or whatever, you'll always be, when you're within the clan, you will not starve. There are disadvantages too, which I can list, but I'd say that it's a magnet for clustering. But I also think that there are NGOs, and here's where I don't want to put the blame 100% on the Somalis. There are people on the left, and the Democratic Party enables this because they have now a clear benefit from having these ethnic communities cluster in these ways. There are all these NGOs that bring them in. It's the story with the Haitians. Many Haitians came on their own, but many were also brought in by these NGOs, paid for with taxpayer money, and it creates a false promise for the immigrants who are coming, but it also creates, it destabilizes these states, towns, and cities where you have close-knit ethnic communities with radically different cultures. And in the case of the Somalis, it's not just that the clan code is pre-modern. The clan code is also anti-modern. It's anti-nation state. It's anti-individual responsibility. It's anti, you're not encouraged to go and create wealth for yourself by earning money, by saving, and then by investing, and I don't know, the way I suppose Americans go about making money. Every penny you make has to go back to clan members. So that community just remains poor. And there's no lifting up yourself out of poverty. That there's the relying on the benefits. There's the cheating and the lying and the stealing. There is the looking at the world as we, the clan, versus everyone else, and then looking at everyone else as your enemies. There are all of these disadvantages to that clan mentality. And I think that clan mentality has to be talked about openly, to be named and shamed, and to be renounced completely. If you want to come to America and you live here, you become an American and you give up, you forfeit your whole clan loyalty culture because it's destructive and damaging.
What about this idea of integration? So I went to Dearborn a couple of years ago and made a film there about the Muslim community, which is mostly Yemeni and lots of other Muslim cultures, less Somalian. And the liberals there in that city were saying, well, this was the former liberal mayor of that town. Oh, well, I did find a goat carcass in my trash, and they do animal sacrifice, and a lot of gay people in the town feel very threatened. They don't want to come to Dearborn anymore. But it's okay because these people are going to integrate eventually. Just like all the other communities who moved here from Poland, from Germany, from all these countries around the world, they will become American. It just takes a bit of time. Do you think that they will integrate the Somalis, that is, into American life after some time?
You know how I translate that? I translate not they will integrate, translate that they'll all become democratic voters. So I don't care about the goat carcasses, and I don't care about the negative impact it has on women and the working classes and gay people and Americans in general. I don't care about that as long as they vote for me and for my party. That's how I translate it.
Let's talk about some of those cultural practices. I know that you've written in your book about some of the horrific things that happened to you as a child in Somalia, but also many, many women around the world who are in this Islamic community, because obviously Somalia has a very strong Islamic doctrine and culture. Can you describe to some of people who maybe don't know about this, what are some of the more brutal aspects of Somali and Islamic culture that goes on in Somalia against women, that maybe these practices are being brought over to America? I know certainly in Britain, there's lots and lots of cases, for example, of female genital mutilation and other things.
Yeah, so female genital mutilation is carried out, and I think it goes on in the United States of America, not just among Somalis, but there are loads of countries that practice female genital mutilation. And the numbers, World Health Organization, like 98% of Somalis mutilate their girls, little girls, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. Over 98% of Egyptians, Sudanese, and on. There's a whole list. And so if people come from those countries and they cluster in ethnic communities, then it is, of course, highly likely that the practice it carries on. And right now in America, we have no way of knowing because there's no detection system that is looking for that practice. And it's not just the female genital mutilation. There's also denying girls education, removing them from school and marrying them off to men from the country of origin or the village of origin or the clans. There's also this rampant cousin marriage. in any case, you mentioned integration. I prefer the word assimilation, just to adopt the American way of life. For young women, Somali young women, to do that, they would have to escape this social control and these practices of female genital mutilation and forced marriages and honor violence. Young girls they're beaten, they're watched very carefully. Are they wearing makeup? Who is she with? She's not supposed to be out after dark. I mean, there's all of this control that goes on. And if you want this society, these communities to assimilate, I would say the first step would be to emancipate these girls from the stranglehold that their families have on them.
In response to the criticism of the Somali community in America, there have been these videos that have been shared all around the internet and Instagram and everything that shows Somalia as a beautiful, amazing country. And it's sort of saying, you know, you Republicans, you're so ignorant, you don't know how incredible Somalia is. And there's some beautiful videos of the beaches and the sand dunes and everything else. Now, obviously, we know that Somalia has its problems. You know, you've written extensively about growing up there. But other aspects of Somalia that are nice, I mean, you know, is it a beautiful place? Are there sort of parts that you're most proud of?
Oh, it's gorgeous. I mean, Somalia, the country, is gorgeous. Yes, we've got the longest coastline, Somalis will say. We've got the most beautiful beaches. There's a great deal of potential. I'm sure there are lots of, untapped natural resources and minerals there. But this takes me back again to that clan culture and that clan code. It's a code that doesn't incentivize building things. They could build, there are about 8 million Somalis, again, according to the United Nations. They've been saying there are 8 million Somalis forever, so I don't know if the number grows or not. But Somalia is vast enough for 8 million or 10 million or 20 million people to live happily and to flourish and to build institutions. But because of this cursed clan code, combined with the embracing of Islamism, it's impossible for people to build anything. Now, Somaliland, on the other side, it seems as if they have wiggled out of some of these, in my view, very damaging clan codes, and they've managed to build something, build towns, build cities, want to work with the rest of the world on their terms and to trade. And that is why I am a proponent of giving Somaliland independence, because at least they can show, hey, we can do it. But there's one feature that Somaliland has that the rest of Somalia doesn't have. Somaliland is almost 100% Isaq. It's the most homogeneous part of Somalia when you look at all the different regions. And because of that homogeneity, and I think combined with it being a former British colony, but because of the homogeneity, there is no other outsider to blame. They are all insiders. And so they can then bring up the necessary discipline to build institutions of trust.
Can you expand on the Somaliland thing? Because I think a lot of people might be interested in that, but maybe not have any idea what you're talking about. So there's an area of Somalia that wants to be independent, is that right?
It's a region of what we call Somalia, called Somaliland, which is what used to be a former British colony. And in 1961, when Somalia became independent, the Italian Somaliland part and the British Somaliland part made a deal that they could form one nation called Somalia. Now, that didn't work out so well for the Somalilanders, because it didn't work out for most Somalis. But anyway, when Mohammed Siad Barre seized the power in 1969, he really came hard. He came down very hard on Somalilanders. And right up until the late 1980s, he was massively massacring Somalilanders. So one of the things that I admire about the Somaliland leadership is that instead of channeling their energy towards taking revenge on what is now Somalia and keeping up the cycle of violence, they decided to channel that energy into rebuilding their region. And geographically, they also have a region which I think is, with a determined and strong military, they should be able to to protect the region of Somaliland. And they're on the Red Sea. They have trading relationships with the UAE and other Arab countries. They've been in touch, constant touch with American administrations, and it looks like the Trump administration is willing to listen to them. Again, for a sort of mutual interest, having Somaliland become independent. And as an American citizen, I think it's also in our interest if we recognized Somaliland. Somaliland is also the only region in Somalia that's willing to have a friendly posture towards Israel, a friendly posture towards Christians. You can have conversations with Somalilanders about how damaging FGM is and some of these other practices. So it's a country, if it becomes an independent country, I'm very hopeful about Somaliland getting its act together, but not as long as they are tied to Somalia, because Somalia is still a basket case and still very much enamored with this clan code.
I want to ask about Islam in particular, not necessarily Somalians now. Do you think the second Trump administration is doing enough to go after radical Islam in America? Do you think there is enough discussion around this in the American press? Because ever since he's become president, I really haven't seen too much focus on Islam in America and more on, say, these little communities like the Somalians and so on.
I'll tell you what I think, and I think that the Trump administration is doing more than other administrations. Members of the Trump administration are willing to call it out by name. So not talk about violent extremism and use euphemisms, but to just spell it out and say, hey, we're facing with Islamism. That, by the way, the Arabs in the Middle East also call it Islamism. They tie it to a radical form of Islam. I think it's a huge positive that the Trump administration has neutered the government of the Islamist government of Iran and is now standing with the Iranian people, that they destroyed the facilities for developing nuclear weapons. I think that taking the banning of the Muslim Brotherhood, I see that as the most damaging Islamist movement. But taking into consideration the banning of that movement, I see that as a huge change. The Trump administration has to tread very carefully, because last time they had a number of countries that they said they didn't want people coming from there to come into the United States during the first Trump administration. And they were accused of a Muslim ban and all the rest of it. Now they have another list. And many of the countries on that list are Muslim majority countries, but there are non-Muslim majority countries on the list. So it seems as if they're using the tools that they have to go after radical Islam without maybe making it all too explicit. But I think in many ways they're much more effective and are willing. I mean, they're only into their first year. So the administration is willing to go beyond what I've seen. And I'm really happy even with any incremental change and progress, because in the last 25 years, I've watched Europe self-destroy. I've watched multiple administrations in America allow Islamism to fester. And so I have a lot of hope that this administration, and hopefully what comes next, if it's not a Democratic-led, unless the Democrats get their act together, but that doesn't look likely, I think that we are cluing onto the threat that Islamism poses to America and the American way of life.
Now, I know that last year there was a huge discussion on the Republican side around whether America should be supporting Israel to the extent that America should be supporting bombing Iran and things like that. That was a huge argument, I suppose, on both sides here in the United States. It seems to have quieted down a little bit recently. But there were some on the right who were saying, why are we talking about Islam? Muslims aren't our enemy. The real enemy is those trying to influence American foreign policy who are mostly Jewish or Israeli. What do you make of that argument that we need to unite, with these Muslims who are conservative socially against the people trying to take over Washington and influence Washington's foreign policy from an Israeli point of view?
I think they're wrong. I mean, that's the politest way I can put it. They're wrong. Let's take the Islamist government of Iran that views Israel as the little Satan and had an agenda. I mean, I don't know if they're going to survive this. I hope they don't. But their agenda was, let's destroy Israel first, and then we'll go for the big Satan, which is in America. And Iran has built a subversive infrastructure on American soil. And I don't know where these people are. Some of them say that they're journalists. How come they don't know that? If you have Hezbollah stationed in Latin America, this is our backyard. Do you think that that is well-intentioned, and should we care about that, or should we not care about it? I think some of the people who call themselves America First, I am 100% America First. But for me, America First also means protecting the interests of the United States of America and Americans abroad. We are the last remaining superpower. And I'm very pleased and very grateful that we are a superpower. And I want us to remain that way. And that means we have to come up with a very robust foreign policy. And that robust foreign policy is this, deterrence through strength, build our military, build our economy, and yes, build our alliances with those with whom we share values like Israel. And so I think there are people who are way too focused on local matters, and they're wrong.
Whilst I've got you, I've got to ask about Britain as well. How satisfied are you, and I think I know the answer to this, with the current Labour government's attitude towards Islam in Britain, towards immigration in Britain? Can you give us a sense of the feeling there?
Well, it seems to me as if, and I just talked to you about the Democratic Party in the United States investing in these ethnic votes. In the United Kingdom, it's the Muslim vote. There's a very strong Islamist network that is capable of mobilizing the demographic of people who identify as Muslim and getting them to vote. And Labour has come to depend on that, and Labour has therefore abandoned its principles, abandoned the white working classes, abandoned women, abandoned the Jewish minority, and has come to depend on this. So whatever these Islamist factions they demand, it seems as if the Labour Party wants to honor that. And right now what they're looking for is a great deal of censorship so that they can continue to spread their dominance and advance their agenda in the UK. And the Labour Party doesn't seem to want to put anything in front of them because they've come to depend on that vote. So it's just a very suicidal form of gaining power, because they will not stay. The Labour Party is hollowed out from within, and it's turning into an Islamist party.
But there is an irony there, isn't there? Because these independent Muslim MPs have been winning elections. I think there's 5 in Parliament at the moment. And the Green Party seems to be even more pandering in a way to that community, or has at least gained a lot of support from Muslims in Britain. So Labour's efforts to go after this group seem to be failing.
Well, I don't know if they're going after this group. It doesn't seem. I don't know who the brains. I don't know who thinks for the Labour Party, but their strategic thinkers are not very clever, and that's an understatement. Because if they put all their money on the Muslim vote, overlooking the fact that Islamists are driven by conviction, and if they don't give them what they want, then they're going to take their vote elsewhere. And so with this far-left alliance that Islamists have, it makes sense for Islamists to ally themselves with the Green Party, because the Green Party is saying, we'll give you anything you want. And that takes votes away from the Labour Party, but it also shows how the Islamists are flexing their muscles towards Labour and saying, look at us, if you don't give us what we want, we will go elsewhere. And so if I were a Labour Party strategist, I would try and recultivate the white working classes, Jewish communities, middle classes, the wider society. And they're not doing that. And they've left the field open to the Conservative Party, Reform. There are more parties. There's Ben Habib has he founded Advance UK. I think all of this, again, is very healthy. It's a way of responding to the status quo and saying it's not working for other British people to pander to Islamists. It's very, very dangerous.
There was a terrorist attack in Bondi Beach recently in Australia by these Islamists who shot dozens of people. In response to that terrorist attack, the Australian government, which is a left-wing government, has focused a lot of their energy on the far right in Australia. Why do you think that is? I mean, do you think that shouldn't they be going after the Islamists?
You see, this it's not amusing in the least. I mean, it's crazy. There is this pattern among what used to be center-left parties, especially in English-speaking countries, but it's not just English-speaking countries in the West. I see it all across the West, that center-left parties that were founded to protect the rights and interests of working classes and women and so on have now shifted gears and are now focused on pandering to ethnic communities, perhaps anticipating more immigration or encouraging more immigration. And when you look at the Jewish community in Australia, numerically speaking, as is in everywhere else, they don't seem to be interesting politically. And calling people far right has been the smear and the code word for any objection to immigration, particularly from Muslim countries, any objection to this censorship of Islamophobia and the propaganda, any of that, if you're not allowed to criticize Islam, you're not allowed to scrutinize it, you're not allowed to say we need to stop this advancing infrastructure of mosques, youth camps, and schools. If you do that, you're far right. Well, I think they are far wrong.
As the Labour Party continues to decline in the polls in Britain, we get closer to 2029. Keir Starmer is obviously incredibly unpopular if you look at opinion polls. Do you think that this crackdown on freedom of speech that you're describing, the censorship of people who are concerned about Islamism in Britain and so on, will that only get worse as we get closer to 2029, or do you expect things will improve?
Well, I think they will once. Again, I'm not a Labour Party strategist. I don't know who strategizes for them. It's not in their interest to continue on this path of censorship because they're simply going to aggravate entire swaths of voters against them and against the Labour Party brand. But they might think it is the easier solution. Why do I say that? Because for years and years and years, they have doubled and tripled down on these smearing of people as racist and xenophobic and Islamophobic. And they have to, I mean, at this point, they're just clinging to what is the Muslim vote, and the Muslim vote demands censorship. So unfortunately, I think they may end up doubling down on that. Then there's also events. There will be a terrorist attack, or there'll be some kind of event that will force their hand somehow. There are all sorts of things planned in the United Kingdom now. The inquiry, for instance, into the grooming gangs. What are really rape gangs of young children, white British girls from working class communities who were raped over and over again by grown-up organized groups of men from Pakistan and Bangladesh and Somalia and Eritrea. I know the Pakistani group is supposed to be the biggest, but they're not the only ones. So as that inquiry comes out, and what is the Labour Party going to do? I think that they're going to try and censor that. They're going to try and suppress that. But it can't be suppressed because the whole world knows it. And also, I think that the Islamists are emboldened. In the past, Islamists would speak in Arabic or in Dari or in Somali or in, the other languages and say what it was that they wanted to say to their congregations. Now they speak in English, and they're online, and they're caught openly saying that their ambition is to take over Europe. And then they lay out the way they think that they're going to take over Europe. And so most people today who are informed and plugged into social media and into the news, in all of these countries, they can't pretend that they have no knowledge. They know what is going on and they don't like it. I have been harping on the fact that it's become unsafe for women in general, not just Muslim women in general, to walk about the streets of many European cities and towns because of immigration. We aren't allowed to talk about that. If you talk about that, you're a racist. So do you defend, the physical protection, the physical integrity of women, or do you aid and abet this type of violence against it because you want more and more immigration? That takes me back to the question you asked me about the Democrat in Michigan who said, oh yeah, they will integrate because the Polish people integrated. In other words, as long as they vote for me, I don't care what the unintended negative consequences are. That's what we are seeing from center-left parties, and it sucks.
Ayaan, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.